Hello, my name is Penny Levikas and I'm from the Research in Effective Education in Early Childhood Centre at the University of Melbourne, and I'm very pleased to be sharing with you some findings from our Family Engagement with Early Childhood Education and Care project, which took part during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which I'm recording this presentation, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respect to elders, past and present. I'm ever grateful for their enduring care of beautiful country, and I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you're all learning and living, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this conference. So to begin, I'll provide you with an overview of our study rationale and our key research questions, and I'll provide a brief summary of what we did. Next, I'll discuss our key results, including the main themes and sub-themes that were conceptualised from our thematic analysis of the data. And finally, I'll discuss our main findings, the implications of these for practice, and some of the key learnings. So the COVID-19 pandemic caused widespread disruption to people's lives, including families' access to and engagement with early childhood education and care services. We know that children learn and develop within a range of contexts, including the home environment and the community. And research shows that family engagement with quality early childhood education and care services can support the well-being of children and families, and is especially important for families and children experiencing disadvantage. Restricted access to support restricted access to this support, due to the government-mandated mitigation measures during the pandemic, created significant challenges for many families, and research is showing that this might result in long-term negative impacts on child and family well-being. So therefore, we wanted to capture families' experiences at a time when many families had limited access to ECEC and services were required to navigate alternative methods of engagement. So the aim of the Family Engagement Project was to examine Victorian parents' perspectives of family engagement with ECEC services during the pandemic, and to explore the ways that services and educators supported child and family wellbeing and the home learning environment. So in September and October of 2020, parents were invited to take part in an online survey, and they could also indicate if they'd be happy to take part in a one-off interview. So recruitment was conducted via an advert that was posted on social media and was shared with our networks. And eligibility to participate in the project included having a child between 1 and 6 years of age who was enrolled in early childhood education and care and living in Victoria at the time of the survey. We had 66 parents complete the survey, and of those, 25 parents, so just under a third, agreed to take part in an interview. So recruitment and interviews occurred during Victoria's longest and harshest lockdowns in 2020. So our interviews were conducted via phone or via Zoom, and all our interviewees were mothers. 3 of the 25 interviewees lived in more disadvantaged areas compared to the Australian population. And as often occurs with self-selecting participants, on average, this sample was more advantaged. Around half of the children whose parents were reporting on were female, and children were attending a mix of long daycare and standalone kindergartens, and we had one family in the sample where the child was attending family daycare. So now I'll discuss the main themes that were identified from the parent interview data. So the overarching themes from the perspectives of parents included increased parent stress and exhaustion during the pandemic and increased concerns for child wellbeing. The second theme was the impact of restrictions on educator-family relationships. The next theme was the ways in which educators maintained engagement with families and supported the home learning environment. Another theme was the importance of maintaining a sense of community and the impact of this on family wellbeing. And the final and perhaps most critical theme was the importance of valuing the early childhood education and care workforce and sector and the need for continued advocacy. So most parents reported increased parental stress due to the pandemic and the mitigation measures. One parent said, "It's been really hard and it's been really stressful. I felt like I really struggled with my parenting." Reduced access to ECC and other external supports of care, such as family members, meant that families needed to juggle multiple responsibilities while also working from home. Another major impact of changes to ECC access and attendance during the pandemic was concern amongst parents about children's social emotional well-being. So parents reported concerns about the impact of social isolation on their child and the lack of opportunities for interactions with their peers. So one parent stated that their child said, "I'm really sad, Mum, because I can't play with my friends." Transition back to ECC and the impact of social isolation was reflected by a number of parents. And as one parent stated, "My son, he's quite sensitive and he took a while to develop the social confidence and interest in things, and he was really starting to have the friends become very important to him just before all of this started. Our son does struggle with transition and change. He just takes a while and he really needs to feel safe. If he doesn't feel secure in an environment, then it's very hard for him. And that'll be, I think, definitely one of my biggest concerns for the next few months." The next theme was around the impact of restrictions on educator-family relationships. So a main barrier reported by families to engaging with early childhood services during the pandemic was the elimination of opportunities for those informal face-to-face conversations with educators during pick-up and drop-off times. So one parent described such opportunities as the main way we used to engage, and the loss of such opportunities was viewed as a major barrier for developing relationships. It was clear that parents valued these informal meeting times as opportunities for exchanging information with educators, as well as observing and assisting their child in their early childhood environment. However, as lamented by one parent, it went from in the yard pickup, they're all running around and having a bit of a chat, being able to actually observe what's going on, to suddenly having zero information. Despite the negative impacts of reduced face-to-face interactions with educators, parents also reflected on some of the digital modes of communication that educators used with families, which really supported educator-family relationships and the home learning environment, which is part of the next theme. So in this theme, parents reflected on the effectiveness of various strategies for remote communication and home learning. Successful ways of maintaining communication with families to promote family engagement and support home learning, including making phone calls or video calls to see how families and children were doing, posting photos, videos and stories of what was happening at ECC services via digital platforms such as Storypark or Facebook, sharing learning and development plans with parents, and sending home resources and activity packs for children. So overall, strategies that were successful in engaging families remotely and supporting children's learning from home were those that focused on fostering genuine connections with families and children. Communication with families that was regular and timely was well received by parents, as well as open communication channels whereby educators remained accessible by phone or digital modes to families, adopting two-way modes of communication. One parent described the benefit of the Dojo app, which appeared to enhance communication and engagement both during and post-lockdowns. I think in a way the kinder got dragged into the virtual environment out of necessity, but it's been fantastic. Now that they're back to learning face-to-face, they're still using it to send us pictures of what they're doing, which is lovely, and to communicate. I find it really simple and direct and much more easy for me as well, as a parent who is often not around to pick up and drop off. Now I feel like I know what's going on a bit more at kinder. The fourth theme was the importance of a sense of community. So families reported a loss of community and opportunities to interact with other families at their service, creating another barrier to ECC engagement. As one parent commented, "That's kind of lost now. You don't really get to speak to many parents anymore." Another parent described struggling in the new normal, where you don't get to be a part of the community as much. The negative impact of this loss of community appeared to be felt strongly by families experiencing vulnerability. "I'm acutely always worried about my child's education because of where we live and him being disadvantaged." A positive experience that emerged from the loss of opportunities for face-to-face interactions was the increase in families' use of digital modes of communication, with several being organised by families. One parent described connecting with other families at their ECEC service through parent-initiated online modes. We've got a WhatsApp parent group too, so there's a lot being exchanged. Ideas, we set up a lot of joint phone calls, they had Zoom parties, everyone getting on and listening to a story, and then that sparked its own set of connections. So the final and arguably most critical theme, particularly if we're thinking about advocacy for the sector, is parents' perspectives on the importance of valuing early childhood education and the profession. So parents reflected that the pandemic had highlighted the work of educators in not only providing care for children, but also playing a key role in supporting children's learning and development, acknowledging a deep appreciation for the fact that they're educators, not babysitters. As one parent said, they're a really integral part of raising your child because what you do at home reflects on how they are at school. The centre's about breeding and fostering a community of parents and kids. Parents commented on their appreciation for the length that educators had gone to in supporting families and children during the pandemic, particularly given the pressures on the sector. Parents also expressed gratitude in relation to educators' commitment to ensuring the health and well-being of children, as well as their families. Throughout the whole situation, they've always come back to saying that their primary concern is about the welfare of not just the children in their care at the present time, but the welfare of families who've been really seriously impacted by the pandemic. They're such skilled workers. I'm so grateful to them, and I'm so outraged by how they've been treated as such an afterthought in terms of their welfare, their work and pay conditions. This is summed up perfectly by one parent who said, "We're just in awe of the sector. I think it's been incredibly tough, and I really hope that at a policy and government level, there could be some recognition of the fact that this service, the sector, is the absolute lifeblood of our society." The findings from this study highlighted that although the COVID-19 pandemic created significant challenges impacting the well-being of many families, it also highlighted the critical role ECEC plays in families' lives. Parents spoke of the importance of their connection with ECEC services during this time and the role of educators in supporting their child's learning and wellbeing during the pandemic. Some also reported that this supported their own wellbeing. Parents valued their connection with their child's ECEC centre during COVID-19. Technology was viewed as really beneficial to some parents for enabling connections during the pandemic, but it's important to note that parents also commented on limitations, such as difficulties in engaging very young children who seem to need that face-to-face interaction. As reported by many parents in this study, ECEC provides a vital service in nurturing children's learning and wellbeing, both during the pandemic and beyond, but as well as supporting parental workforce participation. Findings revealed an increased awareness and acknowledgement by parents of the essential role of the ECEC profession for children, families and society, which we need to build on and advocate for more recognition and improved working conditions for those in the ECEC sector. This is especially critical in light of recent workforce studies that show high levels of educator burnout and turnover across the sector. So in conclusion, government investment and advocacy is needed to further highlight the vital work educators do and to enhance the value of the sector in our society. We would like to thank and acknowledge the parents who took part in this research. Thank you.